Hey there. Welcome to the More Miles podcast. I'm Lauren,
I'm Scott.
I'm Michelle.
and we are the More Miles Run Coaching team. We are here in this episode with our very first special guest. I am really excited to have a guest on our show in the first place, but I'm also just very excited for this guest in particular. I'll give a little bit of an intro, and then we'll hop right into what I think is going to be an interesting and inspiring conversation. So our guest this week is Roy McHaffa. He is one of our athletes on the More Miles Run Squad. He has completed 13 ultramarathons in the past 5 years. He has 4 100-mile finishes under his belt. 3 of those 100-milers took place within a 12-month time span. And all of this he has accomplished starting at the age of 60 is when he began running ultramarathons. So a very extensive list of accomplishments that began at a very interesting stage of life and has really just blossomed and taken off since that time. So without further ado, those are a list of accomplishments. Roy, thank you so much for joining us so we can actually get to talk a little bit more about you, not just your list.
Lauren and Michelle and Scott, it's a pleasure to be here today. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to speak with you all.
Me too. Okay, so let's go back. I just mentioned this long list of accomplishments that sort of began around 59 or 60 years old. Let's go way back to before that. When you were growing up, either as a child, teenager, did you play sports when you were growing up?
Yes, I played Little League Baseball for about 8 years and soccer. I was actually on one of the first soccer teams in Fairfax County, Virginia. I was 10 years old, and that was 1969. So, yeah, soccer's been in Fairfax County, I guess, since, 50-some years. And funny story, Little League Baseball, my nickname was Little Dynamite because I was always small for my age. But, yeah, I played baseball. I played every position except first base and catcher in soccer. And I played 1 year of basketball, but nothing on the high school level. When I got about 15, I was done with sports.
Okay, so nothing in high school. Did you play any sports in college then either, or just what made you stop around 15?
I just lost interest in it.
So when did sports re-enter your life then?
Well, I started playing golf in 1990. And then I got in running around 2003. I'd done a couple of races. But as far as I want to go back to college, I went to night school, and it was my 4th try at night school that I was successful, and that was at age 32. And it took me 12 years of night school. It took me 7 years to get my associates, and then 5 years to get my bachelor's. And so I figured if I could go to night school, for 12 years, I wanted something mindless to do. So that's how I got into running. I was done highlighting textbooks, and I was done, doing research papers. And I said I wanted something mindless to do. After all, and my first goal was a marathon. How long could a marathon take compared to 12 years? It's a, blink of the eye. So that's how I got into running.
That's funny. So when you first started running, was the marathon the first distance that you went to?
Actually, when I first started, I did the Pikes Peak 10K in Rockville, Maryland in 2003. And I remember starting there was a girl at work. She's about 13 years younger than me, and she was running it. And then we started trash talking. Well, she kicked my butt. I think I did like a 9-minute mile. And then the next race I did was the Annapolis 10-miler. And that's a hard race. That's at the end of August. Felt like yesterday, as hot as, and it's hilly. And they say right at the beginning, you're not going to have a PR. It's a nice race. You go down to Annapolis, but it's a hot race. So I basically went a 10K and 10-miler. And then when I got, my college degree, I was working in Rockville, Maryland, and I joined the Montgomery County Roadrunners, and I joined their first-time marathon program. So my marathon first was at age 46. And I thought I was old back then. Now I'm looking at, almost 20, I'll be 65 in October, 20 years later.
So tell me about that first marathon. Which marathon did you run and how did it go?
It was the Marine Corps marathon and it did not go well at all. During my training, I got hurt. Also, I want to back up. In 1990, I started doing an exercise bike. So actually, before I started running, I would do a stationary bike. So what happened was cardio was way ahead of I didn't realize at the time you learn these things. Cardio was way ahead of the muscles. So I kept getting hurt because out there running, my body wasn't used to it. So during training, the Marine Corps marathon, they had it set up like you. We did speed work. We did long runs on the weekend. The speed work was down at Wooten High School, and it was on the track. But anyway, I hurt my legs. I ended up getting stress fractures in both legs. So I obviously had to take time off. It's around August when I started getting hurt. I started the program in May, like you do. You had the 6-month training blocks, thereabouts. And so I came back, and I was running. I signed up for this thing. I'm doing it. So I got down there, and again, it was a hot day. It got like up in the 70s. Even the running coach said, this isn't good when it's this warm so early. Anyway, I was doing fine. I got the mile 10, and the pain just came back. I remember I crawled, hopped, whatever it took, walked to get to the finish line. Ended up getting across the finish line like 5:45, and then I barely could walk around for like 3 weeks.
So you knew you had those 2 stress fractures when you started that day?
Yes.
Wow.
They didn't hurt, but I thought they'd gone away. But what happened after the race, like Lauren for PT, we go see Elite Performance. Well, they had a running doctor who specialized in runners. Adam Spector. And I went to visit him. He took x-rays, and he said I had the 2 stress fractures. And I explained to him I had been hurt. And he goes, well, if you were hurt, why did you do it? He goes, it's not like you're getting $1 million. I said, well, doctor, it's just like night school. You have your quizzes, you have your tests, you have your final. Every semester, I wasn't going to do all the work and skip out on the final. So running, you have your speed work. You have your long runs, you have your test races, then you have the final, which is your race. So I wasn't about to skip out on the final. Although there was plenty of times during that race, I wish I did. But man, what a great race, as you all know. This was 2004. There's probably 10,000 runners then. It's grown to 30,000. Yeah, but in a way, I'm glad I finished it because that just gave me my mode for all my races. Finish them. Unless I get pulled, for the most part, finish them no matter what. So the first race, no, it did not go well at all.
I would never condone going to run on stress fractures or possibly still injured, but I really like that train of thought that you have there. You study, you take the class all year, and you take the final. I like that approach. That's what the race is the chance to test and show off what you've been working toward. I like that mentality. Okay, so then what? This is your first marathon. It was hard.
Right.
What came after that? Did you continue running after that, or did you take a break?
I was injured for a while. And what came out of it gave me orthotics. I've been wearing orthotics for running ever since. That was 19 years. I wear orthotics now. Well, I was trying to think. So I was writing stuff down. My next marathon wasn't until 2006. And that was in Portland, Maine. And that's beautiful up there. So everybody said, why Portland, Maine? Well, that's a funny story in itself, because somewhere between 2004 and 2006, I decided I wanted to do a triathlon. But then I remembered one small problem with that. I can't swim.
That's key.
So I started taking swimming lessons. I asked around Gold's Gym. They said, well, there's this girl or woman, Barb Hunt. She is a swimming coach for, might have been Mufflebone High School, one of the Jefferson County high schools. And at the time, there was a lap pool in Charlestown. And so I went to talk to her, and she goes, yeah, well, how much? She goes, $5. I go, $5 for swimming lessons? She goes, yeah, I lifeguard here. So on the days I lifeguard, you just come up and I'll teach you. So I started taking swimming lessons, and she had me doing fins. And I was doing, wearing the fins. and I was doing pretty good. And then one day she goes, let's try without the fins. And I was demoralized. I was actually swimming as hard as I could, and I was going backwards. I'm like, what the heck? I mean, long story short, we became good friends. And Barb at the time was doing the JFK 50, which was, I couldn't even contemplate running that race. And she was doing 100s. And we started running together. And so she had an uncle in the 70s that was qualifying for Boston, and he lived up in Portland, Maine. So we decided, I'd go with her. We'd do the marathon up in Portland, Maine. Long story. That's how I ended up there. And I did end up doing a triathlon. It was a mini triathlon in Manassas. I never could get the swimming down right. I ended up swimming on my back. And it was a 250-meter swim, a 4-mile bike ride, and a 1.5-mile run. I'd never done all three together. And when you sign up, they say, what's your pool time? I was trying to get the slowest time. I didn't want people running me over, but it was pretty cool. They held a seminar on how the real triathlons work, and they give you an idea what you do. So, there's a line in the pool, somebody's sitting down, they jump, the next one gets down, it's go, go, go. I remember, and my swimming coach was supposed to go with me. Well, she couldn't make it. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. This is the first time I was going to be in water over my head without my safety net, without my swimming coach. I said, what the heck? Again, I signed up for it. I'm going. So I sit down, they say go, and I pushed off in midair. I turned around, so I'd be laying on my back. So I never got, the breaststroke down. I said, I'm doing it. I mean, most people probably take a 250-meter swim, 8 to 10 minutes. It probably took me half an hour, but I was just grateful to be done and get out of the pool. So you transition, you go on the bike. So I'm on the bike, and I'm making up time. I'm passing people, and I'm coming from this kid. He probably looks to be about 10 years old, and he turns around and sees me coming. Well, he stands up and starts pedaling. I'm thinking, you little sucker. So I stand up and start pedaling. So, finally I go by him, and, being the adult I am, I turn around and suck my tongue out. Said, I got you, buddy. But then what was funny is you get into the run part, and my legs are like jello, because I never did, because I'm thinking, a mile and a half. I'm going to really rock this mile. I could barely run. My legs are like jello. But it's pretty cool I did that. I did my mini triathlon. I can check a triathlon off the list. There's other stories with that, but I know we're here to talk about running. But so, it was a gap before I did my next marathon. It was in Portland, Maine. I was way better. I did like a 5:05, I think, but still it hurt, and I was limping around for nothing injured. It was just sore, limping around for another 2 or 3 weeks.
So I heard you along the story of doing the triathlon, building up to your next marathon in Maine. I heard you mention a key race that is this the first time that you had heard of the JFK 50, and did that spark anything at that? I mean, what you said, this was 2006 or 7 maybe?
Yeah, well, I was with my running coach 2006, and she'd run JFK 50s, and she'd been doing the Rocky Raccoon 100, but that was just the furthest thing from my mind. I hadn't even run my second marathon yet. But it did spark interest back in 2008. I was going to do it, and I have a notepad in there back then. I did everything on a spiral notebook, tracking my training, and the very front of it said 50 at 50, because in October 2008 I was going to be 50 years old. But then again, I remember that June, the injury bug popped up again, and I got hurt. I didn't really know what I was doing, especially nutrition. I'm just winging it, and I got hurt again. And so that just derailed that. And so my next marathon wasn't until Freedom's Run 2010. And then it was like 8 years straight until I hooked up with you. I did, in those 8 years, I think I did like 15 marathons.
Okay, gotcha.
All around the East Coast mainly. Different ones.
Okay, so the original goal was 50 at 50. That didn't happen. When did you actually line up for the first time at the start of your first 50 miler?
That was 2018. And I trained on my own. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
59, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, 59. Okay. And as you all know, if you dare, that was a pretty hard race, the snow and again, the mud and everything. And I trained on my own. I actually did a walk run on a treadmill. I did 7 hours. I did 30 some miles on a treadmill in Gold's Gym. I just had my water and stuff and said there's any time limit to go. No, so one of my runs I practiced on the treadmill. And the second time I did Marine Corps, was preparing for the 50. I heard to go. And again, but I hadn't trained for marathons. It was better than the first Marine Corps, but it was still slow. 5 something.
31. You say you did 31 miles on the treadmill?
Yes, I did.
That is the most mental strength I've ever heard of in my entire life.
And it wasn't even his own treadmill. He said Gold's Gym.
That's incredible. That in itself is just I feel like that's an award-winning accomplishment right there. That's amazing.
I always used the treadmill as a training structure because I used to do a treadmill, maybe try to do one of my 20 milers on the treadmill a few weeks before I did the marathon. Because my theory was, if I can do 20 miles on the treadmill, when I get out there with people, it should feel easier. I'm going to be moving. Psychologically, I'm going to be moving instead of watching TV with my headphones on. That's how I approach everything. I use them as training stressors.
So, Roy, you said you did JFK in 2018, right?
Yes.
And that was your first ultra or your first?
Yes,
50?
that's my first ultra. I went right from the marathon.
Except for those 7 hours on the treadmill there.
Right, exactly.
So what prompted you to choose JFK as your first ultra and your first 50? I know you wanted to do it 50 when you were 50 and then got derailed. So why JFK as your first?
It was so cool. And actually at the time I was working, you all know, I'm sure they know John Carnahan, and he had done it like the year before, and he was back in the running, and he talked about, plus it was a local race for one thing. It just has so much history with it. If you read about the history and, John F. Kennedy, and it's right here in our own backyard. And plus I feel it's a very challenging 50. You come out of Boonesboro straight up the hill, then you're on the Appalachian Trail. And that's what I try to explain to people about ultras too. They'll say something about pace. I go, I not only mention it, I say it's nothing about the pace, it's the endurance. I go, especially JFK, you don't realize you're on the Appalachian Trail. Have you ever been on the Appalachian Trail? Have you ever seen a picture of the Appalachian Trail? It's rocky. It's rooty. You're looking down, you're just trying to survive it. Me, I'm trying to survive it so I don't break something. But that's to answer your question. Yeah, I think it's it's the oldest ultra marathon in the United States. And that's why it's history, and it's right here in the backyard.
So this was your first 50 miler, first official ultra. What happened at that race?
Well, it was muddy, but that wasn't it. But one thing, so on trail running, you always hook up with people. I hooked up with these 3 or 4 ladies, and they were talking about, how many JFK 50s they'd done. I said, well, heck, I'm going to hang with them because, they'd all done like 14 or 15 JFK 50 milers. So if I hang with them, no doubt I'm going to finish. And of course, I had my first fall, and they said, all right, you're a trail runner now. You're not a trail runner till you fall. Luckily, I didn't hurt anything. And so it was cool. We were chatting, and then we get down to the canal, and then it's before they paved it or whatever it's called now. And it was all muddy, and that's when I learned that mud is slicker than ice, because, man, I was falling and busting my tail on the canal more than I did on the JFK 50. So we finished the race, and I come home and stuff. But then I realized that at one point, the JFK 50 used to have 14 miles to do it. The
14 hours.
I'm sorry. Thank you. 14 hours to do it. So you had an early start for like the non-elites, and the elites started an hour behind. So I finally realized, I think that the group I was with, most of their, because this is 13 hours now, most of their not that it's not an accomplishment, but most of their accomplishments, because they had 14 hours. So if I had 14 hours, so I found when I got to Downsville, it wouldn't have been an issue. But anyway, so I get to Downsville, and I got there 10 minutes too late. So, race over, and I get in the van. I'm kind of still, furthest I've ever gone, I was down, didn't get to the finish line, and people were saying, why are you so happy for? I go, well, usually when I run a marathon, I get to go to McDonald's. I have like 2 or 3 hamburgers. So I said, I just did 46 miles. I'm getting 5 or 6 hamburgers.
That's at least 5 or 6 hamburgers.
Exactly.
So
Right. 50 miles.
for those who are not as familiar with the race or the course, that's mile 46 that Roy made it to before he timed out and got pulled off the course. 46 miles out of 50 through the snow, through the mud. That was a particularly difficult year, but very, very close, but not quite.
And then, as they say, the rest is history. John told me about Lauren, and I sent Lauren a text, and it's been great. I mean, that's how it all got started 5 years ago in November of 18.
So, Roy, I've got to ask you. I did not know it was mile 46 that you got to. Right before you said that, you said you had a smile on your face. For that, it's the longest you ever went. What after that, in your mind, you went that far, but yet you didn't finish. You were so close. Is that what drove you to keep going to your next ultra? Did you think, I want to do another one? Or tell me about that.
That's a good question, Scott, because you're right. That's exactly it. I was so close and didn't get there. I wanted to get it done, and that's what motivated me to come back next year. And then, John suggested Lauren as a running coach. I said, all right, let's go for it. I want to get there. You're right. I was so close. And that's what motivated me to come back, because I didn't get it. I wanted to come back and get it. I wanted to get it done.
So
did you come back the next year?
Yes, I did. And so Lauren and I talked about this. My next 50 I'd already signed up for was the Bull Run 50. That's in Clifton, Virginia. And that's a pretty hilly race too. And again, not to say the weather, but again, it had rained all week. That morning, thunderstorms came through, and the temperature shot up to like 70 degrees. And that's the beginning of April, and so it was another muddy course, and I DNF'd at mile 37. So Lauren goes, she's taking us, what happened? I said, I don't know. I guess, mud and the heat. I said, but don't worry, Coach. I go, let's lace them up and get at it. Let's just go.
So do you ever have that moment of like disappointment, or did you instantly just go right into, all right, let's try again? Like, I'm just curious how your brain was working after each of those.
Oh yeah, I was pissed. I was mad that I didn't finish. But what's odd, both those races, JFK and Bull Run had the lowest finishing percentages. So I wasn't that disappointed. Obviously people finished, but they said the conditions, both those races had their lowest finishing percentages ever.
I think that's interesting, because I think it kind of gives you that fire of like, there's still more to be had here. This isn't like, it's not me. There's more to explore. There's more to figure out. And I think we're seeing this theme with you, Roy, of looking for the next challenge and pushing through until you get it, and until you reach that thing that you're reaching for, or that you're working toward. I have to, sort of along the lines of Michelle's question, I have to note, so the first JFK that you did, where you got pulled out at mile 46, that was on a Saturday. And I think that we were on the phone on Monday, 2 days later.
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's get to work. Let's figure this out. And I remember in that conversation getting on the phone, and probably my initial attitude was, gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, this is, you just had a really big disappointment. And that was not your attitude. Your attitude was, all right, I've got this race. Let's get to work. I've got things I want to do. And I think that's been sort of the underlying tone of our coach-athlete relationship ever since. This is 5 years ago now. So, okay, let's move forward then from that. You had that first DNF. We started working together the week after that. We had another 50 for the next season on tap. That was it was all trail also, to be clear. So it was a little bit, the difficulty was a little bit higher, all technical trail at the Bull Run 50. And that resulted in another DNF, 2 50-mile DNFs in a row. Then what? What came after that?
Success, baby. We kept working together, and then we lined them up to JFK 2019. And the funny thing is I'd done the training run, and I knew what my time was the first JFK, how long it took me to do it, to get off the from Boonesboro to Weaverton to where you hit the canal. I knew what my time was. And we did a training run. I said, whoa. So the training one was really good. It was way quicker. We did a training run from Boonesboro to Weaverton. This is way quicker than the race last year, and I only missed the race by 10 minutes. I said, I'm pretty sure I got this now. Even after that training run, I pretty much knew I had it. I was going to finish. And then during the race, I come down off Weaverton, looked at my watch, I saw the time, and then that actually relaxed me and helped me run better. The first ones, I know what it was. Also during that first JFK, I heard the term chasing cutoffs, which I didn't exactly know what they were, but when we got down the canal, that race, I knew what chasing cutoffs were. So, but come to 2019, there was no chasing cutoffs for me. I just going. I got to mile 42 before I came off the canal in like 9.5 hours. I figured, well, 2 hours. Worst case, I'm coming in at 11:30, getting up there. And I remember coming into Williamsport, and I got emotional. I'm getting a little emotional now because it's like, man, I got this. I'm going to run 50 miles. And I would never thought that, especially after the DNF. I said, man, I got this race. Then you come, the cops directing traffic, go across, and you go up and you come up the hill. And then you're coming in, just the crowd and the finish line and the announcer. And I said, damn, I did it. I remember I called you, I said, so excited. But I'm sure Lauren gets these calls all the time, when she helps people accomplish what you don't think is possible. And she goes, all right, we'll talk about it later. And I was just so ecstatic. I think I met some of my golf buddies for a couple of beers or something, but it's a hard time sleeping. I'm just so excited that I accomplished it.
So to put that in perspective, 1 year before that, this is a race that has a 13-hour time limit, and you were pulled off the course at mile 46. When you came back 1 year later, you finished in 11:37. So that was an hour and 23 minutes under the cutoff. Not only did you finish, but you finished an hour and 23 minutes before the cutoff. That's huge. Yeah. And it took a year. I don't want to sweep that under the rug. It didn't just happen right away. It took a full year. But that's a massive improvement from 1 year to the next. People don't just drop an hour and 23 minutes off their time every day.
No,
but that wasn't
come by.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I was gonna say, what do you think changed? I know you had Lauren, there was learning from the first 2 races, but what do you think the biggest difference in yourself or your training or whatever it was between that first JFK and this past one? Because that's just amazing, that time difference.
Just to be honest, coaching, it was Lauren. I give Lauren all the credit, because before, what would happen was I didn't have confidence in my training plans, or, I'd be halfway through a training cycle and read about something or Google on the internet and start changing. So John said, hey, Lauren had coached them up pretty good. I just did everything Lauren said. I did every run, and, I just went with it, and it worked. And maybe I was eating better too, from, Lauren saying what all had to do for nutrition areas, the whole package. But the main thing was Lauren gave me the confidence I could do it, and I just followed her training plan. That was one less thing I had to worry about, right? All I have to do, if 5 years later, my philosophy is all I got to do is go out there and put one foot in front of the other. Lauren's got all the hard work, or you coaches have all the hard work. For everybody you train, you have to set the paces, you have to set the mileage. And also with working with Lauren, she's also, part psychologist. She's there for the feedback and giving us confidence that, we can do it. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was having some bad runs. I'm like, man, am I slowing down? And she used a word I had to actually Google to know what it meant, but it meant basically don't overreact or don't use too much drama. And like a week later, I'm telling her what a great run I just had. So yeah, it's up and down, but yeah, Michelle, it's just Lauren. I got a coach that I believed in, and all it was easy. I didn't have to worry about the training plan. One less thing for me to worry about. Now, I didn't know I was going to be successful at the time, but I just followed her plan and was doing the long training runs on the canal. So yeah.
I think that's huge. Not to focus on myself as being anything special in that, but having a coach specifically who is expert in the thing that you are training for, and being able to do that, to take a little bit of the brain piece out of it and have someone in your corner that is outside of your own head, to be able to kind of take an objective look at your training, at your fitness, at what you're doing. I think that's key for a lot of people. It makes a big difference to have coaching. Go ahead, Scott.
Roy, I wanted to ask, I mean, it sounds like so much in your finish of that JFK went right. I mean, you said the training run leading up to it, you came off Weaverton, you were confident there, you know, your time was well under the cutoff. On that day, you know, what was the most difficult part of that 50? Inevitably, it gets hard. For you, I mean, things went really well. What was the most difficult part about the day?
I always tell people I was afraid of the Weaverton switchbacks. I said, no matter what, just take my time. I didn't care how long, because I had a close calls of tripping and, you know, falling, even in the first one I did. And I knew there, even during the training run, I mean, some of them I would just get on my tail and slide down. I said, look, the canal is just right down there. You're not going to win this race here, but you could sure as heck, not that I'm going to win the race, but you know, you could sure as heck lose it right there in those switchbacks. So the switchbacks are the hardest part to me, and then all the anxiousness at the start line, you know, waiting to start and everything, and wanting to go. But I mean, the nutrition, you know, went well, and yeah, everything just flowed. And I mean, I'm coming to every aid station with a smile on my face because I know I got the race. And it just relaxed me and made me run better. When you're out there chasing cutoffs, I guess I kind of put too much pressure on myself. You know, I'm trying too hard, too quick, because it's hard to chase cutoffs. But yeah, Scott, I mean, the hardest part was probably waiting at the start and then the switchbacks. I tell anybody running JFK, just be careful on the switchbacks.
I feel like there's a theme, like with what you're saying here with JFK as well as your training, is that almost in a sense, like removing the stressors was the biggest, like it seemed to have such a big impact on you, like taking the pressure off of the cutoffs with Lauren, planning everything out and just knowing that you could trust in her. Like it just, I think like, it's almost like once you let go, all that success kind of started coming in versus when you're kind of like corralling it yourself. I mean, I just kind of saw two common themes there. I just thought it was interesting to point out.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the less you think, for me, the less I think about, the better. One of the best things I did as far as thinking about stuff is getting a Coros watch where I didn't have to charge. My 150s, I'm sitting there with wires running out my sleeve with those battery packs, keeping my watch charged. And then this also has the nutrition timer. Just one less thing. I'm getting old. For one thing, so I can't remember stuff. That's the main thing. And so anything I don't have to remember, I'm all for it. This has a nutrition timer. The battery lasts forever. No having to carry chargers. Less stuff to remember. You know, the putting your camel back. And you're right. Just the less things you have to remember. Just the training. I mean, the training, not have to worry about, am I doing this right or doing this wrong? You listen to the experts. You guys are all experienced experts. I'd tell anybody. I still do. Listen to your coach. If Lauren's a coach, I said, they'll ask me questions. I said, listen to Lauren. Do what Lauren has on the training plan. It's a simple, don't listen to me, listen to your coaches.
So moving forward, we've covered a lot already, but this is only year one of your ultra marathon story. So this was the end of 2019 that this big breakthrough finally happened for you. You got that JFK finish. It's still your PR that time.
Yes.
But it's about to get better, folks. Okay, so we headed into 2020. the beginning of 2020, pre-pandemic, you had some plans, some big plans. So let's talk about that. You had your first successful 50-mile finish, and then what?
Then, of course, after you run 50, you got to run 100, right? And so I texted Lauren and go, hey, what do you think about me running 100? I knew I wanted to do it. I just wanted to see what, she's my running coach, what she had to say. So, it's going to have to be, instead of one run long on the weekend, it's going to be back-to-back long runs. It's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of effort. And I think within 10 seconds she replied, I replied back, yes, let's do this. And so, yeah, it was during COVID, and one of our training runs was, our training races was the Great Seneca 50K we did. And right, so yeah, I wanted to do the 100. We started training for it.
So this was you signed up for the C&O Canal 100, April of 2020. So you started training, it was probably January. We started really focused training for the 100. Got a couple races in there. We did together. I'm not together. We were at the same race though, the Greenway 50K. That was the last weekend before the world shut down. So we ran this 50K, and it was the week after, it was the Friday after that everything shut down. So we had planned out in your training calendar, we had that race was a 50K. We had another 9-hour event planned, and then the 100 as your goal for that year. After the 50K, everything was canceled. All the races were canceled. So what did you do with that?
Well, I went down. I said, you know what? I trained for this 100 miler, and I'm going to keep training. So I went down, and the ISC 9-hour challenge was part of that training. So I went down the C&O Canal, and I did a 9-hour challenge on the C&O Canal. I ran 9 hours on the canal as part of my
yourself.
Training. Yes.
You didn't have any support that day either. That was a truly solo 9-hour training run by yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And funny part of that is I remember the first part of it, I'm like, taking pictures of myself, every few miles. And now I realize that these people in the run squad, they're getting tired of seeing my face. So I stopped. I said, I guess I was just excited about my accomplishment. And the other thing was there was nobody out there because of COVID. I think I maybe ran into one person. So nobody's out there except me. And I was doing out and backs, and I set my car up as the aid station.
So the end of April rolls around when the 100-mile race is supposed to happen. I don't think they had officially canceled it up until maybe just a week or two before. Word comes through they are not going to hold the race. There was still really no races at all happening at that time. But you didn't take no for an answer. So your very first 100-mile was done virtual on your own. You made your own 100-mile race.
Well, you and John came down and paced me. You paced me around mile 50, and then for 25 miles. And John Carnahan took me the rest of the way. The funny thing, I do remember texting you and said, hey, I said, I just got word C&O Canal 100 is canceled, but I'm going to continue to train and go down and run it. And I'd even emailed the race director of the C&O Canal 100. I know it's canceled. I'm going to go on down the canal and run it on that date anyway. And he replied, you don't understand. The race was canceled. I go, no, I understand the race is canceled. I'm going to go down and run it. And he was like, let me know how that goes. I didn't know if that was a sarcastic of, right, let me know how that goes. That was really, let me know how that goes. So when I finished it, I emailed him my race report, and he published it on the C&O Canal 100 website. And it was amazing of all the outpour support. They didn't even know how old I was. I never put in how old I was. I did that because I was 61 at the time.
Go ahead.
When you did that on your own solo, did you see anybody else that was trying to attempt it solo, or were you the lone?
I was the only one out there.
Wow.
And yeah, Lauren and I talked about different ways. We were going to try to get other people to pace. And first of all, the canal and everything was open, but then they shut down the parking to the canal. I said, well, I'm going to get on the Brunswick. That's a commuter lot. They're not going to shut that down. Plus, we decided maybe the less fanfare better because of all the stuff about COVID. You don't know what the authority, you know what I'm saying? So, but no, Scott, I didn't see anybody else out there. There were people biking because then people were going outside because of COVID. So actually the first 50 or so wasn't too bad because there's other people out there. And then, Lauren came and met me.
Yeah, we did, I think about 20 miles. I think I ran you into the first part of the evening. It was dark by the time we finished. And then John ran with you through the night section.
Yeah.
Your first 100-miler, you had some hallucinations, right?
Yeah, that's pretty funny. I mean, yeah, I'm going the trail and I'm with John and go, hey, John, who are those people up there? He goes, what people? And it was like, if you ever been to a drive-in movie theater or screen, it's like people on this big screen and they're dressed like the Kentucky Derby. See, every year I go down to Myrtle Beach for golf week during the Kentucky Derby. We all sit around, place bets, and we watch the Kentucky Derby. So this is in April. So the Kentucky Derby must have been on my mind, but I'm seeing all these people, and John's like, dude, you're hallucinating. Then, of course, I saw the standard, sticks that look like snakes and stumps that look like bears and all this stuff. But it was pretty wild. And it was cold that night, too.
I remember that too, yeah. So you did it. You finished 100 miles on your own. I mean, you had 2 pacers, but this was really a self-supported, there's no start line, no finish line. There was no medal. There was no aid stations. You did this all yourself, completed 100 miles. And then, so big achievement, big accomplishment. The season after that, you decided to, again, this is during COVID, so a lot of races were uncertain, but you decided to come back to the marathon to try something that you hadn't done in a while. So let's talk about that a little bit. What made you checked off that 100-mile bucket list? What made you decide to come back to the marathon?
It was always a dream of mine to qualify for Boston, and so you and I, that's what we started on, to qualify for Boston. So that's what made me come back to the marathon. And the first test was the Harrisburg half marathon. And I had my best half marathon ever. I broke 2 hours and I finished third in my age group. And then 2 months later was the Harrisburg marathon. Now, when I finished the Harrisburg half marathon, I don't normally look at my watch, but I did look at my watch to see where I was standing. And with about a mile to go, I had a shot at breaking 200. So I pretty much sprinted. 2 hours. I pretty much sprinted, that last mile. I crossed the finish line. I was happy. Then I realized that, I'd need to do the 9-minute mile, same thing for the marathon to qualify. I said, man, I don't know about this. I'm out of gas after 13 miles. I don't know how I'm going to do 26. I'm like, well, you know what? We still got, 2 months to go.
So I think you kind of glazed over that, but I think I don't want you to glaze over it. You were 61, you were almost 62 at the time of that half marathon, and you ran a lifetime PR at 62, faster than you were running when you got into running in your 40s.
Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah, the best half marathon I ever did was Winchester Battlefield half marathon. I did like a 2:03, and I was in my 50s, and then I broke 2 hours. It's amazing that I'm getting older, but I still feel like I'm getting, stronger and faster and maintain it. So this is all good. So yeah, and then we did the the full marathon. I'm 62 now. And I needed like a 350 to BQ. I fell short of it, knew I was, but I still had my best marathon ever. I did like a 4:23, and that was my best marathon by by 14 minutes. Again, another PR.
And this is 20 some years after your first marathon.
Yeah, you're right. 2004. Yeah, pretty close to it. Yes.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
But you weren't, like I said, I didn't want to gloss over that, but I think your heart has really been in ultra running for a while now. So we worked toward this marathon goal. It was just the next challenge. I think you are always in search of the next challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, races started to come back. Those were 2 races held at the end of 2020. 2021 race calendars were really opening. It was pretty reliable that things were going to happen. So you came back to the 100 in April. The official CNO 100 race. You had done it virtually the first time. The second time you lined up to do it officially, get the official buckle. And how did that go? Tell us about that. Your second 100 start.
Well, that was interesting because, I'm thinking, I just did this 100, man, no aid stations, no crowd support, none of this stuff. I go, and mistake, this should be a little bit easier. At least there's other, runners out there. And so, yeah, I was doing really good. And I remember I saw you at mile 40 at Manidokin because you were waiting for Adam Lowe. Of course, Adam's coming in at mile 70. You're meeting at mile 70, and I'm at mile 40. I remember part of our camp, we were talking about this race, and part of our conversation was, well, I'm not worried about you, DNF. And I go, yeah, either am I. But things happened. The weather changed. I wasn't prepared. It started raining. And then, I'm in the rain, I'm soaked, and the temperature starts dropping, and then the wind picks up. At mile 50, I got a chill. I just couldn't shake. I'm just uncontrollably shaking. Now I'm getting worried. I'm a little worried about what's going on here, but yet I wanted to finish the race. I just kept plugging away, and then got down to Weaverton. And in between Weaverton and Brunswick, I called John. I said, I'm done. He goes, really? I go, yeah, I'm just shaking uncontrollably. I don't know what's going on. I'm done. He goes, you sure? I go, yeah. He goes, okay. And that's a funny story because the day before, John's going to pay for it. Look, John, remember, you can't let me stop no matter what. You got to drag me across that finish line. He goes, yeah, I got you covered. Don't worry. So when I call him, it's like, yeah, okay, I'll be there to pick you up. But I'm joking, of course. But yeah, I was just done. You know how it is in those races. Your body's already competing for calories to just keep moving and brain function. Now I had one other obstacle was I'm cold and I'm shaking. I don't know what's going on. So I called John. John picks me up. I get in the car and I immediately get in the car. I'm not going to repeat. I was cussing. I'm not going to do another one. This is the last one. I'm done with this stuff. And we're driving back to Manidokin to get my drop bag. Starting to warm up some, but then I'm feeling bags. I'm starting to warm up. Well, maybe I could have continued the race. How all that goes, right? And then he goes, well, just show me where your bag's at. I'll get it for you. So I get out, and immediately that cold rain, started hitting me, and I just started shaking again. I got the bag out in his car, and I probably sat in his car another half an hour if I could get out and get in my car. So I think it was probably, definitely borderline hyperthermia. It was coming. So. And I remember driving home, and I'm kind of getting warm. And, of course, you go down Sandy Hook Road, which goes right by the canal, and I'm seeing all these headlamps. And I just started getting, I was pissed. But I know I made the right call. So that's how that one went. I DNF'd at mile 60.
So 200-mile starts. One you completed, but it wasn't official. You finally, a year later, came back to get an official finish, and it didn't happen. Made it 60 miles and dropped out. Wow. Third attempt, finally got it done. So you went straight. You took this DNF and you went straight into the next one. This was in the spring. You went straight into another 100-miler for the fall, and finally got there, got it done. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, yeah, so I remember I'm all mad, I'm all disgusted and stuff. So Monday, I want to get back up on that horse. I got to get this done. So I was looking for other 100 miles. I came across the Canal Corridor 100 miler in Akron, Ohio. So I'm going for it. This is in October. This is perfect. 6 months away, 6-month training block. So Monday morning, I texted Lauren. I said redemption and had the link to my sign up. And then, we just started training again. I go up to, and then I go on the, during the time I'm training, getting close to race, I went on the Facebook page of the race, and I said, hey, I'm coming out of town to pace. Anybody want to pace me? And I got a couple pacers, and we're all still friends now, and I got it done in like 28 hours. And again, that was another one like JFK that I knew I had it. There was a point in the race where I knew I had it, and I just relaxed. I kept moving. I knew I had it. Diane Rapaski, who I met in Ohio, were good friends. She was pacing me. We were joking around. We were just having a good time. Oh, and a funny story about that one was, so I decided I want these people. I said, okay, tell me a good place to eat. I want to treat you guys to dinner. I want you guys to get me know me while I'm still semi-normal, because race times 100, you're kind of out of it. So we met them, raced them, and at first Diana was a little apprehensive. She didn't know me. I'm going to spend all night with this guy. I don't know. I go, look, I said, come to dinner. I go, if you don't get good vibes, no hard feelings, I understand completely. So we're leaving the table, and Spencer goes, well, I'll see you tomorrow, because Spencer was, Baker was volunteering at the race. And he goes, well, if you need anything, let me know before I meet you at mile 50. So around mile 45, I texted him. I said, hey, would you mind going to McDonald's and getting me a hamburger, a French fries, and a Coke? I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to eat. I got a craving, so I always laugh about that. I'm in a 100-mile race, and I ordered out food, right, basically. And he met me. He took me 20 miles. Real good kid, real good guy. Met him. He even was at GDR last year, and we're doing GDR again. And I just can't say enough about the running community. It's just a great group of people. Anybody who runs different races, you meet people, the run squad. I mean, it's just all really good stuff. So yeah, and it was, and Diane and I spent 30 miles together, in the middle of the night. It was just great. And I mean, I got done with the race. We got some breakfast there. There was a place you could eat. And then 5 hours, I went to the hotel, took a nap, and 5 hours later, we're watching football, drinking beer, and eating burgers. 5 hours after I just ran a 100-mile race, because the adrenaline, I was just, I accomplished it. I did it. So yeah, I mean, that 100-mile was a big deal for me, getting it done.
And it doesn't happen alone. I think that's a good message too. It doesn't matter what the distance is. It doesn't happen alone. You have support all along the way, whether it's from a coach or a running club or family, whatever it is that you have. It takes a team to get through any kind of big accomplishment, running included. But I don't want to gloss over it. But you have now, at this point, you are 65 years old.
Yes,
yes?
I'll be 65
about
in
to
October.
be.
Yes.
Okay. You have now completed the canal corridor that we just talked about, was your first official 100-mile finish. You've now officially completed 4 if you include the virtual one that you did on your own. So 4-time 100-mile finisher, 65 years old. You aren't done yet. You are still seeking the next big challenge. So tell us, before we even talk about the next big challenge that you're seeking, what is it that is continuing to drive you toward, well, I've completed 100 miles now. What's the next hardest thing? 100 miles too easy now. What drives you to keep chasing a new challenge?
That's what drives me, the challenge, to see if I just want to see if I can do it. I want to go out there, and also I want to do it before, and the other thing is I want to do it before I can't. I mean, I think that's big. You don't want to look back and say you should have tried. I want to do it now while I can. And that's another thing, is I got an order. Gratitude is big. Even though on bad training days on the canal, look out and see the people rafting the mountains and just say, hey, you know what? I'm out here doing this. There's people who can't do this. So, stop your whining, just go with it and see what happens. And yeah, so the challenges motivate me. I tell you what, there's people in our run squad that motivate me. Penny Weaver at 70 completed JFK 50. Art Gregory, 79, running, doing the Senior Olympics. Todd Weiner at 68, just rocking a half marathon. Patrick Key's got a new hip. He's after doing it. So these people in our own right here in front of me motivate me to keep going. In addition, I joined a Facebook group. It's Runners Over 60. And so I thought I was really old at 46, running my first marathon. These people are running their first half and first marathons in their 60s. So, man, I'm like a youngster. And then you get your Facebook feed where these women were in their hundreds running races, or in their 80s, So why should I stop just because of my age? The two words I hate to hear most of why you can't do something is age and genetics. Once you start using age and genetics, you're already limiting yourself. You already put that doubt before you even get started. So I'm just going until I can't. So yeah, GDR is my next challenge. So that's what the challenge is what motivates me.
I love that. That whole, everything that you just said just really lit me up. I mean, you talk about being grateful and, knowing that when you're out there, not everybody out there can do the things that you're doing. And I think you are inspired by those around you, but you are also really inspiring the people around you as well. Again, it's not even necessarily the accomplishment itself. It's the fact that you continue to push forward, that you are always seeking the next challenge. And it has happened plenty of times in your running career that the first time you've gone after this new challenge, you failed at it, but you came back to it. I don't think there's yet to be a challenge that you failed and didn't try again. And you keep coming back. You're chasing that mastery. You're chasing the time out there, the experience. And it's incredibly inspiring to people around you and people watching your journey. Yeah.
I love that you're so humble that here you are, you've run all these 100 miles on your own, you're in person, 50Ks, all these crazy races. And you're looking at our squad and picking other people out and saying that they inspire you. And that's it's bringing a tear to my eye. I just want to say that just speaks volumes about you and your mentality as a human. And it just shows people who, I think there's a lot of people who will go through and think I'm just doing this. And here, I would compare myself to you as a runner and say, man, look at what he's doing. But it just shows that you don't know who's looking at you and what you're doing for someone else. And I just thought that was so I just wanted to tell you, I just thought it was so heartwarming how you said that.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, you guys are, you're going to get me emotional now, but, I mean, the running community and you guys, I mean, everybody's just so friendly in our squad and supporting one another. And you have coaches. I mean, you guys are doing such a good job. Like I said, I've been watching all your podcasts. I'm not sure if I'm going to watch this one, but no, it's just you guys, everybody does. I mean, I was a supervisor at 21. Which is very young, and I finally got out of it at 42. But one thing I learned at 21 was how different everyone is. Not everybody thinks like you. And I hear, and people as a supervisor, just like I might, come to Lauren for advice, not how to word it, for support. It's support. And that was my role as a supervisor, looked at it as support. If they came to me with their issues, I said, look, whatever they're dealing with, I said, I'm not the expert. By all means, I'm not the expert. But I will support you. Whatever you need. And the thing about that, again, is it's so different, that everybody is so different. And everybody in life is going through something, everyone. And that's one thing I was at 21, I was naive about. Wow, I thought everybody was like me, but they're not. And I'm glad I learned that at such a young age, because that helped carry me through everything I do, is people are different. And when I was younger, I was a lot more judgmental. And one thing I learned is don't be judgmental. I mean, when you're judgmental, you just really are shutting the door on a lot of opportunities. Just be open to everyone and everything. So sorry, I got off a little bit.
No, that's okay. I think that segues great into what's next for you, because again, you are open to everything. And you have some really big plans ahead of you. So GDR, you mentioned, for those who don't know, that's the Georgia Death Race. It is a mountainous, technical, difficult running race in Georgia, aptly named the Georgia Death Race. You took a stab at it already in 2023 and did not finish, as seems to be the pattern.
This is true.
But you learned a lot, both in training. I think you trained in a completely different way than you ever have before, and really took a lot into that race and took a lot out of your experience there. So tell us real quick before we sort of get toward the end of this podcast, what is ahead for you? What are you looking forward to most and training toward next?
Well, next again is GDR. I want to go back and, I want to see what I can do. I've learned one thing, is GDR really isn't that technical. I found that out. Funny story about GDR is that, it is one of the hardest races, and they say, well, the good thing about it is the first, when you come up Kuso Ball, that's like a 4,200 climb, but they have it set up so they say that, runners of all levels can see the beautiful sunrise. So, of course, we start the race. It's pouring down rain. I'm having a heck enough getting up there. I finally get up to the top, and it's cloudy. I'm like, sunrise my ass, but the sunrise was the last thing on my mind anyway. And yes, I want another crack at GDR. And Lauren, I've asked you this a million times because I mispronounced her name. Who was it that did the GDR? Is it Yana?
Yana. Yeah, Yana placed second overall. She was first female, but second outright in that race. And another local runner who we both know. Same hometown, but went to the same race.
Yeah, and so she was on the podcast, which I listened to. The race director had her on his podcast, Run Bum, and talked about GDR. But the funny thing was I didn't realize we were on the same bus going up, and that was another story where the bus in front of us caught on fire. Everybody had to get on our bus. It's pouring down rain. Now the bus is overloaded, and the bus can barely get up the mountain. Well, that's not too bad, but then again, it's raining, and the bus coming down the mountain is just flying. And at one point, it's on school buses, and I just got my head on the seat in front of me. And the guy goes, "You taking a power nap?" And I said, "No, I'm praying I just get to the start line. If I get to the start line today, my day is complete. I don't care about the race." I mean, with my head down, I could feel the bus just, wobbling and stuff. I said, "Does that guy know it's overloaded? I hope the brakes work." And then we get down there, and it's already raining. And like 5 minutes before the race starts, the whole sky just opens up. I mean, as soon as the race, we were soaked. Everybody was completely soaked within, 15 minutes. So I get to the 13-mile part. I knew I wasn't going to make it. But anyway, there's a guy there. He goes, "This is a hard one." He goes, "This is my 5th time running the race. And I succeeded the 4 other times." He goes, "I don't feel bad. The conditions were, really hard." So that kind of made me feel better. But it's like you always struggle with yourself about knowing you're not going to finish a race. You get to that point where, okay, you're not going to do it. It's like there was this kid in front of me, and I caught up to him. We knew we were DNFing. It was muddy. It was kind of treacherous. And I said, the other thing was, I still got the whole season running ahead of me. I like to ride motorcycles. I like to play golf. And I'd be damned if I'm going to do something here stupid and break a bone or something. That's the point it was. So, but the funny thing is how the cliches start flying back and forth, because you're going through acceptance. You're accepting that you're not going to finish. Hey, we started the race. Yeah. How many people can do this? Yeah. We gave it a shot. Yeah. We have to start. So they just start going back and forth because we're in our mind, we're accepting that we're not going to finish. So that was fine. So after that went on, I'm thinking about, I can't wait to get back to the room and get a beer and a shower and a burger. Well, at that point, we'd already been up almost 12 hours. We had to be up at 1:30. We had to catch a shuttle bus at 2:30 in the morning to go to the start line. So it was already a long day. So yes. And so it was like 2 weeks. As soon as GDR opened, I said, I'm going back for it. I mean, when the race was over, first couple of weeks was rough. I was just like in a slump. I was really feeling bad about that race. But then, you kind of come out of it. And then I want to do a 200. And at first I was thinking about the Tahoe 200, but then I saw where there's Nebraska 200. In Nebraska, it's called the Cowboy 200, so it's a flat one. So this year I was a little bit hurt after GDR, leg and stuff, and I said, I don't want to go into a 200 training, because then if I hurt myself, I wasted the money and I wasted the time. But I think that would be next September. After GDR, I want to go for the 200. And as far as GDR, so I have a bar set for GDR. It's 13 miles. Anything past 13 miles is going to be a success for me. If I don't complete it, I'll come back year after year. As long as I'm progressing, I'll keep going. And so that's my goal with GDR. It may take more than once or twice or 3 times, whatever it takes, as long as I'm able, I want to go back and climb that mountain. So yeah, so
Relentless
that's all I wanna
forward
do.
progress summarized in a life that you're making here. It's incredible.
Yeah.
So we have a thing that we are going to try. Michelle came up with the idea for closing out our guest podcast is to have a final 10K round of questions. You are going to get 6 questions, 2 from each
Okay.
of us. So that's 6.2, 10K. All right. So let's go ahead. Scott, why don't you start off our final 10K of questions for Roy?
All right, Roy. Question number 1, roads or trails?
It's a good question. Now, right now, I'm going to say trails because I'm not doing any road races. I like road races because you can zone out, and which I have to mentally. Trail races, I gotta, you're constantly looking down. So, but I like trail races right now.
Okay. Second question is when you're training, I'll do training. Headphones, music, or no music and no headphones?
Well, in between, I got hearing aids back in March, so that was something to get used to. So I can stream music. So I stream music on my hearing aids. So it's hearing aids on that one.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Does that mean that you can technically wear those in the JFK 50 that is so renowned for not allowing headphones?
Man, I didn't even think about that, but hell yeah, they're hearing aids. I mean, heck yeah.
That is equipment.
I'm gonna have to tell Spindler these are hearing aids, dude. Good point, Lauren. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I could see me having a PR and then coming up to disqualify me, right? I'm gonna be rocking
It's
out like
a running joke that no headphones, very strictly enforced at the JFK 50 mile. But if you've got some hearing aids, there's your workaround right there.
there you go.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted. All right.
Do you want me to go next? So what is one quirky thing you do before a race?
Well, this is gonna be quirky with the Q. I put 3 pennies in my front right pocket, and they have to be heads up. So I go in my change drawer, and I pick out 3 pennies with heads up, and I put in my pocket. The funny thing about all this, I've been doing it for years, and I can't remember why I started. And I think I must have had a good race one time, and I emptied my pockets, and there were 3 pennies. So, I hate that the secret's out. It doesn't come down to training, nutrition, or hydration. It's the 3 pennies in the front pocket. I mean, that's about as quirky as you can get, I guess.
So the 3 isn't even a significant number.
No, I just can't remember why I did it. I swear it must have been one day I emptied my pockets out of a race, and I had a PR, and I said, there are 3 pennies in there, and that's what I'm going with for now on. So I put 3 pennies in my front right pocket. And they have to be heads up.
They can't stay heads up. They just have to be heads up when you pick them up.
Right, exactly, yeah. It's like you see a penny on the, I'm not picking up a penny if its tail's on the ground. That's bad luck.
All right, if you could pick 3 people, living, dead, real, or fictional, whatever characters in the universe you want to pick, to be on your 4x400 relay team, who would you pick?
That's an easy one. Both my parents are deceased, so I'd want my parents and Jimmy Buffett. And that would be the slowest relay race ever, because I'd want to spend the time with my parents. So
That's great.
I love that. Good choices. All right. What is your favorite running snack, whether it is pre-run, on the run, or post-run? Favorite running snack?
peanut butter and jelly Uncrustables. They're easy to eat, easy to carry, and they have carbs, fat, and protein.
Good one. I like that one. And so convenient.
Yep.
Okay, last question. If you could give your 20-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Buy IBM stock. No, seriously, probably just lighten up some. Don't take things so serious, and try not to be self-conscientious. I've always been overly conscientious, so just try to lighten up a little bit more. And when I was a supervisor at 21, I was told many times I was too young, so the spotlight I felt was on me. there's any mistakes, those always going to come back that you were too young. So I always joked I never had time to be fun in the workplace, but in my new job, I'm not a supervisor, so I can goof off some now.
I love it. All right, Roy, thank you so much for coming on the More Miles podcast. Thank you for being our first guest and a truly inspirational guest. I think this was a really great interview, and I hope people really enjoy it as a listen on their next long run as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you all for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you all.
Thanks, Roy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Roy.
Bye.
All right. For those listening, you can find the More Miles podcast on YouTube if you want to see the video version. You can also find us on Spotify. Sorry, we're the More Miles podcast on Spotify, on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at More Miles Run Coaching, or you can find our website at moremilestogo.com, where you can learn about us as individuals, as a team, and reach out and contact us as well. All right. Thanks for joining me.